Hi, I'm Alexander Markov, and it's a pleasure to be here. I was very fortunate to be brought up in a family of musicians. And my father is a concert violinist and a teacher, Albert Markov, and my mom, she played at the Bolshoi Theater also as a violinist. So I was very lucky to be brought up in that professional, high-level environment. And then I studied there for first 12 years of my life, and then we came to the West. As a kid, as a youngster, it was very exciting, of course. The technology that was 20, maybe 30 years ahead of Russia at the time. It's crazy. My father was always my main teacher, always. I studied a little bit at Juilliard, but my father was my main teacher through the years. My father, when he had a great experience in performing himself, and he carries the experience that he can translate to me, what I can say the best about his teaching with me is the fact that on one hand he was very strict with everything, but on the other hand he let me stretch my legs, like they say. He gave me space to breathe on my own, and he let me have my own individuality. He was reasonable in that respect. So strictness yet flexibility. Of course, he was a great artist, and he wrote this famous book about system of violin playing and all. So he had incredible schooling, and from the Russian experience and all these famous teachers that he was studying with back in the day. Again, on top of that, he gave me an opportunity for myself to express myself, which is very important, because some teachers are like my way or the highway, and this is the worst. I think it really kills the individualistic development. And I think for any musician on any level, it's very important to develop his or her own style. It's like a fingerprint, and that's what makes it special and interesting. You don't want to be cloning the students, if you will. Music always came incredibly natural to me in playing the violin. Frankly, my academical part of my brain was never very well developed, and I was never a good student. But I always felt that I was more on the artsy side, if you will. And since I was very young, I started when I was 5 years old. Music was something that came very naturally to me. It's like playing the violin was always a pleasure. I was never getting nervous about playing. Even when I was 7 years old, I remember I had one of the first concerts. I just was so excited for the day of the concert. So it was a very natural process for me. 4 years later, when I was 12 years old, just came to New York City, and I was passing by this famous Carnegie Hall that everybody talks about. Even in Russia, we knew about it, of course. And I asked myself, what are my chances to ever play here as a soloist? Because I was like standing right next to it, but it felt like so close yet so far. So luckily, when I was 16, I already was soloing, with the orchestra at Carnegie Hall. So it was a tremendous opportunity and honor to have that possibility. It was a beautiful experience. I played Mozart Violin Concerto, and then I played Sarasate at Reisen. But again, even that event, everybody told me, oh my God, are you going to play at Carnegie Hall? And this is so big and so famous. Are you nervous? I said, no, I'm so excited to do that. Playing the violin, holding it, it just feels good, it feels comfortable. Even at Carnegie Hall, it was like, yes, you feel like a responsibility. That I have to admit, that pleasant sense of pressure. But it was never like shaking like a leaf and think, oh my God, I hope it's going to be over. Forget about it. When I kind of started my career back in the day, in New York City, I had a management, and they said, look, you have an opportunity to do a recital. Give us the program. I talked to my father about it, and he says, listen, stay away from Beethoven sonatas, Brahms sonatas, Frank Sinatra. Did you get the joke, Frank Sinatra? I said, why not? He says, well, everybody's doing it. You have to capture people's attention doing something crazy. I said, like what? He says, what about 24 Paganini Caprices? And I said, I can hardly play one, and the concert is like in 2.5 or 3 months. He says, well, if you want to get noticed, you want a career, you have to go for the extreme measures. And I listened to his advice, and I did learn all the caprices in one summer. And then comes the fall, I start doing it. And of course, it's a process, like you do a marathon. I wanted to abandon all these traditional norms, if you will. Because on one hand, I respected the script. what's written by the master himself, you know. But I didn't listen to millions of those recordings, and I told myself, no, 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 no. I want to be completely free, completely. And abandon all those formalities. Sometimes are too academical, too predictable, too boring. What about showing some musical part of it? Technique is something that everybody can do extremely well if you work hard. Finding something more special, that's much more challenging. And I thought that's where I should focus on. I remember in one day when we actually started playing it and recording it with Bruno Monsajon, I did 56 caprices in one concert in Italy. Because in the morning, Bruno asked if I could do the whole run-through of the evening's program so the video camera guys can get little experience and they have to know what you're doing. I said, sure, it's going to be a good warm-up. So I did that in the morning, then of course for the concert, and then late night, we did some extra stuff for special effects and whatnot. It was a good day, long day, but it was fun. Funny story, I was playing in Russia years ago, right before the pandemic actually. They have this tradition in Russia where there's a master of ceremonies. The MC came to me and he says, do I have something interesting to say about the caprices, because people know about your recording and they want to know any behind the stage details. I said, well, as a matter of fact, I do. And I told him the story about the fact that I had to play 56 caprices in one day. He says, okay, great, let me do this. He said to the audience, Alexander Markov, during that recording, in one day played 78 caprices. As if 56 was not enough, you know, it was so funny. I was rather spoiled back then because my father, you know, he knew all those celebrities, so he, you know, let me play for all those players, and I was spoiled, you know. But they all had interesting personalities, with Jascha Heifetz especially, because I was very young at that time, and he forced me to play Mendelssohn Violin Concerto, a finale, which frankly last time I played when I was like 8. But he says, do it anyway, and he insisted in speaking with me in English, even though at that time I could hardly speak the language. And then he asked if he could take my violin. So he takes the violin, tries a little bit, and he says, this is not the worst violin in the world, which in Heifetz's terms meaning a good compliment. But what was very interesting about Jascha Heifetz is the fact that he told me something as a compliment, but which frankly didn't look as a compliment, when he said to me that he can see that I enjoy playing the violin. And at that time, when I was so young, I didn't realize how important this was, this comment. But many years after, I understood how valuable this sentence was, because, you know, all you need is love. So if you can see a young person enjoys it, that's very important. And then, of course, I went back to New York, and his office wrote to me that Mr. Heifetz would agree to teach Alexander if he will obviously learn more scales, obviously. But I didn't want to go because I was comfortable and I liked studying with my father, and it was on the West Coast and all of that. We'll write a polite answer saying, thank you so much, but the boy doesn't speak any English. They even found a Russian family that were willing to host me there. And I still didn't go, and he got a little bit upset. Heifetz, he was giving an interview in some music magazine, and he says, it's too bad young people today are not brave enough to escape from their parents to study with me. Did not mention my specific name, but of course I knew. I guess I was a little bit influenced by the modern day rock and roll, the whole Western culture in that matter. But it's okay, you know, it's like you feel that you have the foundation of the technique and the musical knowledge that you inherited and you got from, in my case, from my father. It's like a passport, you know, when you get a passport, you're on your own and you have your own decisions to make. And also here, I felt like I could do anything I want in any kind of repertoire. I have the technique, I can have the foundation, I know what basically is expected. Now I can branch out. It's like you drive a car and you know there's a speed limit of 55, but you could go 75, even 80, or even 90 in some cases, because you know what's dangerous and what's not. It's like you become a little bit more creative. You see, I used to hate rock and roll when I came to America. I was very influenced by classical tradition, and maybe I would listen to the Beatles or something on the softer side. But when I went to the high school, I had all those friends that kind of introduced me to this whole new genre. And, you know, by then I could play literally all the concertos that were there. Brahms, Beethoven, Tchaikovsky, you name it, I played it. And this was a whole different world. Sometimes opposites attract, where there's no Tchaikovsky, there's no Beethoven, but you have to create your own stuff. That to me was incredibly challenging because, since we're 5 years old, we're trained like bulldogs, to do a certain function. The music is given to us, the fingering is given to us, everything is given. But now it's like, don't worry about any of that stuff. Do your stuff, do anything you want, but just make it exciting so people can connect. And that was extremely challenging and interesting at the same time. I read many books on Paganini himself, and he was the rock star of the day. He was saying that technique is just a vehicle of expression. Above all, it's all about music. And I totally agree, of course, because if you don't have a technique, there's nothing you can do, because you cannot express yourself. But at the same time, this is not the final goal. When I was a kid, what I loved about him is the fact that he didn't follow this traditional conservative, predictable trend. And what he did, he turned the violin into a headliner of the concert, because before that, nobody would buy tickets to hear a soloist in concert like they did after him. You could do a solo concerto with the orchestra, whatever, but it was a part of the bigger spectacle. It was not like a headliner. He had to develop not just the technique, but like the whole music and the repertoire itself to make it more showy. All this crazy technique like he developed, all those pizzicatos and crazy staccatos and whatnot, caprices, of course, and the concertos, like the whole approach of showmanship. The Liszt came after him for the piano. He was inspired a lot by Paganini. But he was the first one. He opened this whole romantic era. In my humble opinion, in the past, let's say take the 20th century, we have all those famous artists like Heifetz, Menuhin, Oistrakh, and they had a tremendous individuality that if you listen to them on the radio or wherever, within seconds you could tell their style. Now, overall level, in my opinion, in general, not for them of course, but I don't think it was as high as it is now. In the competitions today, everybody can play Cadenza by Serre for the Paganini Concerto No. 1. And during old days when Leonid Kogan was at the competition participating, and the fact that he was there to play that cadenza was like tremendous. So that goes to show that the level is so high now. Online you see all those competition winners. It's tremendous how technically brilliant and accurate they are. So now the question is how original it is. And that's to me what makes a great artist from just an excellent violinist, that he or she will have that uniqueness that makes it interesting, like any kind of music, of course, and anything in life in general. Nobody wants the generic stuff. We all want something special. I would encourage, especially the younger, upcoming artists, to provoke themselves to do something special, because like they say, the biggest risk in music is not taking one. I have a good friend, Christy Julian. She's a wonderful French pianist, and we talked about this interesting idea to put together a concert called From Baroque to Rock. The whole idea is to make it as a musical voyage through the centuries. You start the journey wearing Baroque clothes, and I have a special Baroque violin, and it was specially made for me. As you could see, it's very beautiful. You start the Baroque repertoire, Vivaldi, Bach, Gluck, whatever, and then you move on to the classics. We had a nice string section. They played Eine kleine Nachtmusik by Mozart, and then, she played Beethoven, and of course then I had to play Paganini. But as we were changing repertoire and the genres, we were also changing clothes and instruments. So then for the classical, the romantic, I used my violin, and then later on I switched to my gold electric violin, which is obviously also specially designed for me. Gold, one of a kind in the world, covered with real gold. It's got 6 strings, and the whole idea about this violin was, again, when I started to get very attracted to rock and roll, and the whole idea to me was very intriguing, because I thought, look, there's so many amazing violinists in the world. classical violinists and the repertoire and everything, but how come not nearly as much? There's no mainstream electric violinist. I know Jimi Hendrix of electric guitar. So guitar, he got so many amazing artists, classical, flamenco, jazz, rock and roll, of course. So many amazing musicians played rock music. But electric violin and the technique and the sounds has not been developed, well, I don't say at all, but not so much. There's some great artists, of course, not like mainstream. So I thought there's a void. If you amplify electric violin and it's rather in a higher register, one's ear can handle so much. It like bees in your ear, because when they're loud and they're high all the time, it gets a bit difficult to handle. But so we need to balance it. 4 strings is not enough, so that's why I decided to have 2 extra strings added to it. Obviously the lower ones, because my lowest strings on this instrument is only half tone higher than lowest on guitar. I couldn't get anybody to do it. It was impossible. There's so much, but not what you need, you know. So, thank God, Fan Tao from D'Addario, amazingly creative engineer, string engineer. Fan and I had a good conversation, and I came to D'Addario. I explained him the situation, what I'm going for, and of course the challenge is that it's pretty low for the length. You know, usually if you have a double bass or even guitar, it's not a problem. Because length is, you know how it is, the science of it rather. But here the challenge is that still the fingerboard may be longer than the regular violin, as you can see. Overall length is not that long, so he need to find, you know, a good balance and find a really happy medium where he could accommodate the sound and not make it too loose. And thank God he did. It was amazing. Years ago, I had a Del Gesso. I came to luthier, and I said to him, please give me the best strings you've got. Just don't tell me what they are. I don't want to know. I want to be objective, you know. I want to make a blind test, and whatever is the best, I'm going to choose. So, I did take my time, trust me, because it takes time. And I tried on all of them, not just one, you know, just the whole set. He gave me all the different brands, all the different companies, and blah, blah, blah. Well, long story short, without knowing it, it was D'Addario Zayaks at that time. I tried them, I tested them, and I tried them in a concert, and then I really fell in love with this whole sound and the projection. You know, of course, I love the technique, but I also want the warmth. They either have very loud but rather obnoxious sound, or they're too mellow and not strong enough to project in the large concert halls like Carnegie Hall, for example. So I need to find a string where it could give me that warmth I need, and yet it would project in the large concert halls. Or if you play in the front of orchestra concerto, you know, when you have so many musicians behind you, and then orchestra always plays quite loud, as you could imagine. And that's why I was very happy with the D'Addario strings in general. And then, of course, I started to using them also for other violins. Again, I experimented a lot. I love experimenting. I think that's the only way to find what you want. You can listen to everything that people say, go online, you can, but it's not until you physically buy them, test them, that you really know what works for you or not. The same thing happened with the Baroque violin. I tried different, and then I ended up using the Arte, Pro Arte by D'Addario for electric, in addition to what Fan did for me as a custom-made string. Then the other ones I also use for D'Addario because they give me that extra metal I need to use that would project good with the magnetic pickup. Again, you need that sound and warmth. Now I'm using Kaplan Vivo with a golden spiral E string, and they're extremely powerful strings, warm at the same time, and I couldn't find a better solution for what I need to do. You know, when you play Tchaikovsky Violin Concerto, for example, or even the recitals, it's warm enough to have that projection and sound. So I'm very, very happy. My main passion and future is that I really like the idea of attracting young people into symphony halls in general. Like I was telling about Baroque to Rock project I did, and then I write my own music, which is very important for me, and I arrange it for the large choirs. And what I'm trying to accomplish musically is that, yes, you have this strong element of classical and rock, and you put them together, but at the same time, it has a life of its own, where I don't want to say, oh, is it classical, is it rock and roll, is it... It has its own sound. So I wrote all those different compositions, and one is called Caesar, and it's a big 35-minute epic about Julius Caesar, and it's got the choir. It's very dark, you know, it's like Metallica meets Mozart, I don't know. The whole idea about this is that it's friendly enough for the classical audience, but also it's edgy enough and hip enough to attract young people. And that's exactly what's happening, because our audience is getting bigger and bigger and bigger every time. We just played at Carnegie Hall, it was a totally full house. People waiting outside for 2 blocks even. It was very exciting. I do collaboration projects where we invite young people, like for example at Carnegie Hall, we had kids from LaGuardia School, the choir. It's a beautiful, beautiful choir. I mean, I couldn't believe how amazing they are. Originally, when our producer told them about this opportunity to perform this at Carnegie Hall together, we had 70 kids that wanted to do it. And it was great already, 70 kids is good. But then towards the concert, the word spread around, and we were asked if we could have 120 kids. Then we had kids from the Sacred Heart University. So, you know, young people who, you know, passionate with music, I think that's a good start. And what happens then, they play, they sing, they bring their friends, of their peers. It's such a natural process to do that. That's what's so exciting to me. You collaborate with young people, this amazing opportunity for them, and they have to do it hard, because if not, sadly, we have to find somebody else. You know how it works. Which is also good, because they learn how to be competitive and how to be good, you know. In most cases, we got very lucky, and they do great jobs. I think that's how you bring this whole following more and more. And of course, you know, they like music, thank God, and we give them more music to sing and to play. And then they share it with their friends, and then the word spreads around. School visits, that's one of my big passions. You know, I've never been a morning person, but when I have to do the school visits, closer to the concert, I'm excited myself to do it. It's a pro bono, I never take any money for that, but it's always exciting for me to go to the morning class, whether it's a big, you know, school assembly, but even if it's just orchestral too, and give them little presentation. You know, I play Paganini, they don't like slow stuff, usually try to impress them with all this technique stuff. And then take the electric violin, and then they just go wild, and then they want to go to the concert, and then they bring their friends. For teachers, what I would advise is basically what my father did to me when I was little, which is teach them the best you can. Give them all those pointers with technique, with music, whatever, but give them space to breathe. Let them stretch their legs. They do something on their own, you may not even agree, let them enjoy it. Later they themselves understand, maybe I should do it different, but I think it's very important, because lots of teachers, they try so hard, but at the same time, they try a bit too much by putting pressure on them. And second thing I also recommend is not to challenge them too soon with the challenging repertoire which they're not ready for. And this is something that happens all the time everywhere in the world. When I go, say, give master classes, and I see some kid who is quite good, but frankly he's not ready for Mendelssohn or Brahms or Sibelius for that matter. And yet, for some reason, teachers give all these complicated pieces that they're definitely not ready for. So students have to earn that, graduate to the level where they're ready to embrace and handle the pieces. Because what happens if they take the pieces which are much more challenging, that are not ready for, they cannot do it right. So they will always have a bad feeling of something that is not perfect. As opposed to giving them an easier piece, and where they feel they nail it, and then they feel so good about it, that they feel they get something accomplished, and then they're ready to the next step. Kids are very sensitive, you know, and sometimes some great talent could be buried, unfortunately, if not properly nurtured or taken care of. My best advice to all those kids is one magic word: perseverance. This is all you need. You have to have a passion. All you need is love, you know. If you have a passion for music, don't think about the business part of it. Don't think about the Spotify, don't think about all the streams. It's business, it's dirty in many cases. Don't think about it. Music itself is a beautiful art form, and just enjoy it, especially when you're young, don't have to pay the rent. You know, challenge yourself, you're gonna go through the hardships, but this one thing, perseverance, is gonna make it happen for you, just like it did with me, you know. I'm an extremely persevering person. I have some other weaknesses, but believe me, this is my strength, I dare to say, because I'm very stubborn to what I want. follow your dreams. You have a passion for music, do it. Don't talk about it, do it.